We live in an age where weakness dresses up as virtue, where victimization has become social currency, and where true strength is quietly punished while mediocrity is celebrated as heroism. Arthur Schopenhauer knew this over 200 years ago, and his lesson about it can completely destroy the way you see the world. Look around you. In every corner of modern society, you find the same phenomenon: people competing to be seen as the most oppressed, the most vulnerable, the most in need of protection. Social media has become a giant stage where everyone displays their wounds like trophies, where telling the most tragic story guarantees more attention than achieving the greatest feat. Schopenhauer observed this human tendency with the surgical precision of someone who understands the darkest nature of our species. For him, this wasn't an accident. It was an evolutionary strategy deeply rooted in our psychology. The German philosopher realized something few dare to admit: that weakness, when well performed, becomes a form of power. Not the power of creation, conquest, or transformation, but the power of manipulation, control through guilt, domination through pity. It's the power of the parasite that feeds on the host's generosity, constantly whispering that it deserves more because it suffers more. Schopenhauer saw this as a fundamental perversion of human nature, an inversion of values that should leave us deeply disturbed. Think about how many times you felt obligated to give in, to silence yourself, to diminish your own dreams and ambitions because someone close to you played the fragility card. How many times have you seen mediocre people get promoted not for their merit, but for their ability to present themselves as victims of the system? How many times have you witnessed the complete inversion of logic, where those who work hard and achieve results are seen as privileged, while those who have systematically failed are treated like saints? This dynamic wasn't born yesterday. Schopenhauer identified its roots in what he called the will to live, that blind, irrational force that drives us to seek survival and reproduction at any cost. For most people unable to compete through excellence, creativity, or genuine strength, only one alternative remained: competing through weakness, transforming their limitations into moral weapons, making their failures a source of spiritual authority. What Schopenhauer realized is that our society systematically rewards this strategy. We create entire social structures dedicated to protecting and promoting the weak, not because this produces better results, but because it makes us feel virtuous. It's easier to feel noble, helping someone who declares themselves defenseless, than to recognize and celebrate someone who worked tirelessly to overcome their limitations. Weakness asks for pity. Strength asks us to acknowledge our own mediocrity. But here's the crucial point Schopenhauer wanted us to understand. This worship of weakness does not just corrupt those who practice it, it destroys the entire social structure. When the society starts rewarding victimization more than production, when it starts celebrating failure more than success, when it starts punishing excellence in the name of equality, it's signing its own death warrant. Because nature doesn't negotiate. Reality doesn't care about our feelings, and those who build civilizations are always the strong, not those who claim to be weak. Have you noticed how our modern culture systematically punishes any display of genuine strength? A man who works 80 hours a week to build something extraordinary is called a toxic workaholic. A woman who dedicates herself intensely to her career and achieves leadership positions is labeled privileged or accused of having lost her femininity. Young people who discipline themselves, who study while others have fun, who make sacrifices to reach their goals, are seen as obsessed or unbalanced. Meanwhile, those who failed, who gave up, who chose the easy path, are treated as moral heroes. Their stories of struggle, which are mostly stories of giving up in disguise, become inspirational books. Their failures are reinterpreted as learnings. Their limitations are transformed into authenticity. It's the complete inversion of all the values that built human civilization. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. Most people can't tolerate the existence of true strength because it exposes their own weakness. It's much more comfortable to live in a world where everyone is equally fragile, where every achievement is questionable, where every success can be explained by privilege or luck. That way, nobody has to confront the brutal reality that some people simply work harder, think better, and make smarter choices than others. But what about you? Where do you find yourself in this dynamic? If this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss this journey. The truth is that all of us, at some point, have flirted with the seduction of weakness. It's much easier to explain our failures through external circumstances than to take total responsibility for our choices. It's much more comfortable to believe we're victims of greater forces than to recognize that most of the time we're the architects of our own mediocrity. Schopenhauer understood this temptation because he felt it himself. He fought his entire life against the bitterness and resentment that arise when we confront our own limitations. I remember a situation I witnessed recently. 2 employees at a company hired at the same time with similar backgrounds. One of them spent the first years constantly complaining about working conditions, colleagues, lack of recognition. He turned every small difficulty into an epic saga of suffering. The other simply put his head down and worked. He studied in his spare time, took on projects nobody wanted, developed skills his colleagues considered unnecessary. 5 years later, when the second was promoted to a leadership position, the first immediately cried injustice. He talked about internal politics, about how the system was corrupt, about how he had been sabotaged. The victimization narrative was complete, and the most disturbing part, he managed to convince half the office that he was right. Because it's much easier to believe the world is unfair than to accept that some of us simply make better choices than others. This is the trap Schopenhauer identified. Weakness becomes addictive because it offers us a permanent excuse for mediocrity. When we define ourselves by our traumas, our limitations, our oppressions, we create an identity that fundamentally depends on failure. Becoming strong would mean abandoning this identity, and that's terrifying for someone who built their entire self-image on fragility. Have you noticed how people cling to their emotional wounds like they were treasures? How they resist any suggestion that they could overcome them? Schopenhauer saw this as one of the deepest human tragedies, our capacity to fall in love with our own pain. Because pain gives us meaning, gives us purpose, gives us a story to tell. Strength, on the other hand, is silent. It doesn't ask for applause, doesn't seek validation, doesn't need an audience. And maybe that's exactly why true strength is so disturbing. It exposes the farce. When someone genuinely strong, not the strong person who needs to prove their strength, but the one who simply acts with determination and purpose, enters the scene, the entire performance of weakness becomes obvious. It's like turning on the lights in a theater and revealing that the actors are just pretending, that the blood is red paint, that the tragedy is just a well-rehearsed play. Schopenhauer realized this dynamic creates a kind of reverse selection in society. Instead of promoting the best, we promote the most skilled at playing victim. Instead of rewarding competence, we reward the ability to generate pity. Instead of celebrating overcoming, we celebrate staying in the problem. It's as if we decided that human evolution should go backward. But there's an even deeper secret that few know. Something Schopenhauer discovered about the true nature of strength that can completely change your perspective on what it means to be truly powerful. Schopenhauer's most shocking revelation wasn't just that we worship weakness. It was that we do this because deep down we recognize that true strength is frighteningly rare. The strength he described isn't brute force, isn't arrogance, isn't domination over others. It's something much more subtle and much more powerful. It's the ability to face reality without flinching, to accept total responsibility for your own existence, to find meaning in a life that fundamentally has no predetermined meaning. This strength is so rare that when it appears, it functions like a cruel mirror for the rest of humanity. It reveals not just our weakness, but our fundamental cowardice, our refusal to take total control of our lives, because that means we can no longer blame anyone for our failures. It's easier to worship weakness because it allows us to remain children forever, waiting for someone to save us, heal us, complete us. Schopenhauer saw true strength as a form of spiritual awakening, the ability to free oneself from the illusion that we are victims of the world and recognize that we're its co-creators. But this freedom has a price. It means forever abandoning the possibility of being saved by others. It means accepting that we are fundamentally alone in our journey, and that all real transformation must come from within. That's why society punishes true strength. Not because it's evil, but because it's contagious. A genuinely strong person cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated by guilt, cannot be domesticated by pity. And worse still, their mere existence suggests that others could also choose strength if they had enough courage. It's an existential threat to a system based on the mutual dependence of the weak. Schopenhauer's final lesson is both liberating and terrifying. You can choose strength, but you must be prepared to pay the price of solitude. Because when you stop competing through weakness, when you stop seeking validation through suffering, when you take total control of your life, you'll discover that very few people want to be by your side. Strength only attracts other strong people, and those are rare. But maybe it's exactly this rarity that makes the choice so valuable. In a world flooded with performative weakness, professional victimization, celebrated mediocrity, being genuinely strong isn't just a personal choice. It's an act of rebellion against everything our society has become. It's refusing to participate in the race to the bottom, insisting that excellence still matters, demonstrating that it's possible to live without apologizing for existing. Schopenhauer knew few would make this choice. Most would prefer the comfort of accepted weakness to the solitude of misunderstood strength. But for those few who dare, who choose responsibility over victimization, creation over destruction, silent strength over noisy weakness, awaits a reward that no society can give or take away. The dignity of living as a complete human being, without excuses, without explanations, without the need for external approval to validate your existence. The choice is yours. You can continue in the weakness race, competing to see who suffers more, who deserves more pity, who has more right to complaints. Or you can choose the lonely path of true strength, not strength over others, but strength over yourself. Not the power to dominate, but the power to create. Not the ability to destroy, but the courage to build, even knowing that few will understand, few will support, and many will try to tear down what you build. Schopenhauer left us this choice as inheritance, a choice that defines not just who we are, but what kind of world we create. A world of strong people pretending to be weak, or a world where true strength is finally recognized for what it really is. The only real hope for human transcendence. If this message touched something deep in you, if you recognize the brutal but liberating truth of these words, don't keep this to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel for more philosophical journeys like this one, and share it with someone who needs to hear that true strength isn't just possible. It's necessary, because in a world that worships weakness, being strong isn't just a personal choice. It's a revolutionary act.